Need like a float. Hey, hey, hey. We are live from HousingWire's gathering.
Such a great space.
Wonderful time so far.
Special guests. We didn't really promote this, although a lot of people will watch this because we have two of the very best at what they do in our industry. Nicole Rueth, who I'm just such a tremendous fan of, Movement Mortgage, but so much more than a great leader, a real inspiration. You need to follow her on socials. And of course, Logan Mohtashami, lead analyst at HousingWire. Great to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, well, Nicole is towering over me. Those of you that know me know I'm not a very tall guy, so this is like pouring salt in the wound. But I'm going to deal with it and sit up as much as I can. It's great to see you.
I could get you a telephone book.
It's all right. Now
Yeah.
I've got
Okay.
an array of them basically at home, but unfortunately I'm not at home. What an event! We
Yes.
just heard
Oh my
Varun
gosh.
Krishna speak, and
Yes.
along with Jay from Mr. Cooper and Glenn from Redfin, and so exciting. What do you think, Nicole? What do you think about this revolution going on in our industry right now?
You have three very intelligent men that are made to move mountains coming together to change the way we do business. Lending will never be the same. Real estate has already started to go through a transition. We went through a transition of our own back in 2008, but here
We
we go
did.
again in an entirely different way. I'm really excited because I think it's going to open up more doors for affordability and for access to home ownership, and that's huge.
For sure. Logan? Well, you're responsible for these rates, man. I don't know if you know that, but what the hell? I mean-
until the labor market breaks, guys. That's what I've always been saying.
What are we
So-
looking at? How long is it going to take? Come
well,
on.
I would tell you this: for the first time in many years, after that jobs report, because the headline jobs report beat, but the internals were,
Yeah.
and for the first time, the year-to-date jobs data is actually slightly underperforming. I haven't been able to say that for many years, so it gets a little bit more interesting for the second half of 2025 because trade war starts to get a little bit more serious. Does the White House try to implement a shadow Fed president, which is something? And I always joke. Bill Pulte, who was the president of the FHFA, the first person he followed on Twitter was me, and then I didn't realize that people find out who the government people follow. And then President Trump shared my article on the day that.
That was recently.
Yeah,
I mean, what's it like to have the president sharing an article? Are you kidding me?
At first, I didn't believe it, but
Thought
then
it was
I
a
was like,
hoax.
"There's 680% increase in viewership." I was like, "What's going on?" So then I finally, got on Truth Social, and I saw he did it, and then within like an hour, I get banned from Truth Social because they don't think it's me.
He's not the real Logan.
So now everybody thinks I work with the White House because some of the things we talked about back in November of 2024, and some of the government plans for rates is starting to take fruition. It's going to be a very, very interesting next 7 months because if the trade war doesn't go as planned, the president wanted lower energy prices, lower rates, and he just needs the 10-year yield to get between 3.80 and 4. He'll be happy. So I think that's going to be a very provocative storyline going out for the second half of 2025.
Nicole, what are you seeing out there? Because I know you don't sell rates. I'm pretty sure you sell a lot of value and you deliver a lot of value. So what is that dynamic like of rates that are still in an uncomfortable place, yet showing people that beyond 7%, it still makes sense to buy?
Yeah, we don't sell rates at all because you just get used to where the rates are today until the labor market does break. And even how low will they go? That's the conversation I'm having.
Right.
So you're sitting on the sidelines waiting for the historic rates that should never have been there anyway. And now we're just trying to focus on what does that offer you in gained appreciation and gain opportunity and options down the road in that equity build. So many more options. If I'm talking to somebody on the latter part of life, if they're in their 50s or 60s and they're still renting, I don't have very many options to help them bridge that gap.
Right.
But if they have a home that we can tailor off of, now all of a sudden I have options. And that's what I keep trying to tell the story to somebody who's 20 or 30, saying, I understand right now it's cheaper to rent, so it makes more sense to rent than buy. But let's think about when you're 40, 50, 60, when you're trying to retire. And then I have these conversations. I literally just had this with a first-time home buyer the other day, and she was like, "Can I not think about when I'm going to be 60 years old?" And I go, "I get that, but can I just take you there for literally like 5 minutes? 5 minutes, I could change the trajectory of your life if you'll let me bring you there, and then I promise I'll bring you back."
It's so
You
interesting.
know what's interesting about everything is that not a lot of people know this. Purchase application data, Mortgage Banking
Isn't
Association.
it up like 18 weeks in a row or something?
It is for the first time in many years. This is why people should always be skeptical of reading Diego Sanchez, my boss's.
That's your buddy,
man. His LinkedIn post. Purchase application data has been positive 18 weeks in a row, year over year. The last 5 weeks have shown double-digit growth. It has been years since I've been able to say that. However,
low floor.
It's happening with higher rates, not lower rates.
Yes.
So part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about us nerds. We believe in models, and what usually happens in the past tends to happen in the future. We've already bottomed out in home sales, but every single housing economic cycle since 1968, we see this pattern of rates go up, sales slow down for a few years. They stay flat, either a recession or some reason where rates come down, years of growth every single time. But this year, it all happened with higher rates, not lower rates. And we're talking year 7. So imagine just rates getting down to 6. You get more demand. Imagine if rates get down to 5, more demand. But you're laying the background of similar, like I always compare this time to the 1980s. 1980s, housing was more unaffordable back in the 1980s. Home sales went from 2 million to 4 million, 4 million to 2 million, 18% mortgage rates. People said nobody was going to buy a house, and all of a sudden rates fell 2.5% from 18. Sales started to rise. They fell 5%, got to 13% mortgage rates. All of a sudden, sales started to rise for years. So what we're seeing this year is what we've seen in other cycles, but not a lot of people know that purchase application data is positive for the year to date and year over year.
You seeing that activity in your pipeline?
I'm feeling it 100%. Yeah, this year's 47% better than last year.
What's the difference? What's loosening it up? Is it just attrition and settling into the new norm, or is it something? Is there something else going on?
I think people are just understanding that they can't sit waiting forever.
Right.
Like at some point, I have to make a decision. I could decide to continue renting. I could decide to stay in a home that's no longer fit for me. But that decision has to be made because I've been waiting to make a decision for so long. I just want to continue going on with life and put this decision behind me.
Well, life is happening.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that's what's really. Logan, what did it start at? The lock-in effect. What percentage was it of 5% and lower? Was it like 85% or something?
Right now, I think 72% of the country have rates below 5%.
Yeah.
So
that's going down. It's going down, but slowly.
But here's the thing. I'm not a mortgage rate lockdown person for other reasons. If people actually didn't sell their homes, their low rates to buy other ones, home sales would have been like 1.7 million lower. Every single month, every single week, people do sell their low mortgage rates to buy. Gen X, my generation, baby boomers, even silent generation, life finds a way. So I always say that every day you're closer to death. And eventually now people are saying, okay, it's been 4 years I've been waiting. Now, even though rates are elevated, and this is the key part, every year wages grow. Every year households form. Every year people get married, dual incomes. That kind of economic powerhouse has allowed existing home sales to still stay around 4 million. Total home sales, like new home sales, post-COVID high in purchase application data last month. Nobody knows this. We had a multi-year high in new home sales. Life finds a way, and you just get 1% lower in rates, that buyer pool picks up. If you get 2%, I'm not going to go even below 2% or under 5%, but just the scale of the buyer profiles, because we've been depressed so long. When I say it's like the lowest home sales ever, because I adjusted to the workforce. However, what we don't have is from 2008 to 2015, you had a lot of underwater mortgages. They could not sell their house and buy another one.
Yep.
So that marketplace had a lockdown of equity. Now we have the highest, nested equity near 37 trillion. Everyone's got a different number. Loan to value is running at 47%, extremely historically low levels. 40% of homes don't have a mortgage. And this is going to be the third year of near 5 million total home sales. We have the chance of even going above that. The peak in the last decade was near 6 million. So we're missing 1 million mortgage buyers with home prices here, with rates here, with insurance and taxes here.
Yeah.
That gets better over time because wages grow. households for. It's not just the rate factor, but it's one way for me to explain why purchase application data is we didn't have that in 2023 or 2024, but this year it's been the case, not talked about a lot.
Yeah, but one thing you're not talking about is price appreciation, and that is a factor we have to discuss. Rates go down 1%, then all of a sudden the market gets hot again, values start to go up. We could have more inflation in the housing market, right? In terms of values appreciating, and then how does that affect the progress if that occurs?
Here's the thing. If we're talking about CPI or PCE inflation, home prices don't actually equate into that model. It's more rent and a lot more rental supplies coming up. So some of the data lines are showing negative year over year rent increases. That's going to filter itself. One of the reasons why we have 2.1% inflation in the last report is that shelter inflation has come down. If you look at the history of home prices going back to 1942, yes, I've got all that data. I can even go back to 1910. It's very rare for nominal home prices to fall. If I take 2007, 11 out of the equation, really 1990, 0.7% decline. In 1991, it was 0.2. But the fact that home price growth is cooling down is a positive. What happened is prices escalated out of control in a very short amount of time. The hottest price appreciation was actually 1943 to 1947, like dwarfs this. That was the hottest. And then prices cooled down for a little bit, and then they come back up again. The late 70s, 1977 to 1979, hotter home prices than what we saw during COVID. And then the growth rate tends to cool down. Wages grow, households form. There's your rise in sales. That's how it's worked, I like to say, since the Peloponnesian War.
Most Americans have a very short attention span, though, and couldn't actually equate our current situation, right?
Yeah.
They're all just looking at this going, I'm just waiting for the housing market to bust.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the
data.
problem, because unfortunately what's happened after 2008 with the advent of social media, YouTube and everything, we call it doom porn. So some of the most untalented, uneducated, unsophisticated doomers always talk about housing 2008 without a working model. So we're sitting here in 2025. We were told from 2012 to 2019 home prices were going to crash. Then COVID, home prices were going to crash nationally. We're going to probably end the year up just slightly higher. There are people who are professionals who actually have models and talk about this. Our data's fresh weekly. If we saw anything like we did in 2006 to 8, we'll let everyone know, but it's just not there.
The increase that you saw in the mortgage purchase applications for the new home sales, does that give you any indication, because they're using the rate buy downs, right, to increase their activity? So if we get to their levels in the existing home sale market just through the interest rate drop, I mean, how is that extrapolated as far as the amount of demand that we could see?
So if we want to do an apples to apples, if new home sales at 2019 levels, it's about 1.1 to 1.2 million existing sales higher. So that's how you look at the rates, how it impacts the total demand going up.
Interesting. I like you asking him questions. Keep going. You're gonna pivot in from my guest star to my guest co-host. Yeah. Keep going. You get the chance with Logan here.
Right? I
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
And you guys know each other, by the way. So this is not a first meeting.
We do. No, he spoke at our Next Big Thing event, which was fabulous.
But this
A lot
is
of
the
fun.
first time
Yes.
we've met.
This is the
and
first time, yeah.
First time
Yeah.
we've shared a microphone.
Yes.
So another thing is that one of the differences now is cash buyers are more prevalent, but also down payment data. This is another thing not a lot of people knew. From 2001 to 2008, the down payment percentage was falling. From 2017 to 2025, the down payment percentage is rising. Nested equities are so high that the medium down payment now is between 15 to 18%. That's something that not a lot of people know. So a lot of people go into any housing transaction with much more equity than they ever had. Even first-time home buyers are near 21st century highs.
And we're seeing that. I mean, the generational wealth transfer is massive, right? I mean, a lot of our first-time home buyers have gifts. And they're not gifts like I'm used to seeing, like a $20,000 to $50,000 gift. They're several $100,000 in gifts, securing $1 million first-time home buyer.
It is
market.
the biggest transfer of wealth, I would say, since Cleopatra lost her empire. And
wow, you just keep going further and further back.
I'm telling you, I've got rate charts going back to 3000
I don't
BC.
have a memory that far.
This is what he does. He lives and breathes this stuff.
Rates were a lot higher during the Pharaoh times than it is right now. But
Do we have a record of that?
I have a record. There's a museum that actually has records of it. There's a chart on my Instagram page. You can see it. I go all the way back to 3000 BC. Here, the wealth transfer is so much. Home values are about $52 trillion. There's about 37 trillion of nested equity. But when you take the stock market, when you take aggregate total holds of financial assets, it's like over $190 trillion. And those are the people that actually have the biggest debts, because mortgages are the biggest consumer debt out there. So the net transfer of wealth is going to be one of the most historic things in history. So whoever's crying about living in this time, let me tell you, back in the 1790s to 1850s, life was a lot more difficult. There's going to be so much wealth given off to the younger generations that it's not fair what a powerhouse the United States of America is, especially in this century.
Should we be concerned rising debt, right? So highest, debt load ever in the country, right?
So this is going to be my big funny part of my presentation. Our debt was downgraded by Moody's.
Well, I'm talking about personal debt and I'm talking about personal debt. Second part of that is rising delinquencies in government loans. Is this something we need to be keeping a very close eye on?
This is an interesting. Homeowners on paper, the people that have the highest amount of consumer debt have the best financial profiles, not only in America, but on planet Earth.
But doesn't that break over time?
It doesn't break.
Really?
This doesn't break because qualified mortgage. See, the biggest thing that happened to the U.S. economy this century was actually the 2005 bankruptcy reform law and the 2010 qualified mortgage law. What we're seeing in the data is lower income renters are showing the highest disproportional increase in credit card defaults, loan defaults. FHA has an increase right now, which is typically where we're normally at right there. But outside of that, the people that have the biggest debts, consumer debts, credit card debts, huge car loans, they are doing financially really well. The lower income, though, the renter financial profiles, where we've seen the stress for the last 3 years, actually.
I guess that kind of makes sense because people had enough money the wherewithal to buy the things.
It's like people tell me, we should never sell homes to poor people right now. I said, homie, if somebody's buying an $800,000 house in the San Fernando Valley with prices and rates, they're not poor. You have no idea what poor is. The home buyers now, the homeowners, have a different financial structure than what renters have. So I'm not worried on the consumer debt for homeowners. I'm more concerned about renters, single household renters, ages 23 to 32. Especially ages 55 to 67 too. Those are where we see the stress in the data. So is that big enough to put the economy in a recession? Hasn't been the case for the last 3 years. Consumption is still going. The middle class and upper middle class do a lot of the consuming. They tend to be homeowners. When you look at homeowners, I always tell everyone, when I look at the FICO score charts in America, and I look at all the countries around the world that hate us, it's because we have the 30-year fixed. It's not fair. Fixed debt costs, rising wages, your cash flow gets better. That's why it was created. Other countries, Canada is doing 90-year loan modifications. 90-year. Your home will outlive your grandchildren.
That's far out.
We don't have that problem. But again, a lot of this changed after the bankruptcy reform laws and the 2010 qualified mortgage laws.
You do see that the homeowner is so much more solid, as you're mentioning, right? And they also have the equity to invest, and they're typically investors in the stock market, which continues to go up. The financial stability and security at that home ownership level and above, those top tier of the wealth, will continue to carry, I think, the overall economy to see. I have a hard time imagining a position where we're going to go into a deep recession, but it is those renters that my heart goes out to, that I know that I do videos on and I do content on and always talk about, is how do you bridge that gap? Do you see access points where in the next 7 months through the rest of 2025, where there's any more affordability access? What does it besides dropping rates? Because we're all waiting for rates to drop, but I have to believe that there's other things. And right now the administration is doing things that are going to possibly shut down some of the affordability options.
So I would say this. 1/3 of the society are going to be lifelong renters unless they're part of a dual household income. So they simply will not make enough money to qualify for any house at any period of the last 6 decades. But actually what I see this year, why I'm actually happy, the fact that inventory is growing and price growth cools down, that in itself is a biological economic affordability factor that's making things better. What had happened in 2020, 2021 is home prices escalated out of control. 2021 is a good example, almost 20%. And then rates went. When growth rate slows down, that in a sense lets wages catch up. Wages are growing against inflation. They will grow against home prices. That will make it more affordable.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Out of left field, Bitcoin.
Yes.
I'm curious to know if there's any analysis that you look at where you factor in the incredible wealth that especially Gen Z has accumulated that they're sitting on. I mean, when does that start to creep into the data points?
I would tell you this. The majority of people that own Bitcoin is like 4,000 people. And then there's everyone else. So the velocity of Bitcoin for the younger generation isn't as big as people think. However, 1% of down payment money does come from Bitcoin in the surveys. So as a younger Gen Z or millennial, if their time is to come, that is a down payment source of money. I don't think there's enough people out there in scale terms that own Bitcoin enough to make it a really big thing. But clearly we've seen in many cities over the last few years, whenever Bitcoin goes up, they sell, they've got access to capital. It's same in the stock market as well.
Agreed.
So Nicole, you've got a big team at Movement Mortgage. You guys close a lot of loans and you're doing a lot on social media. You're getting in front of consumers a lot earlier on in the process. When you see what's going on at Rocket with their acquisitions and just see people coming together to get to the consumer earlier, what are your thoughts? Are you rocket proofing your business? Do you ever think about that?
Yes.
I mean, and what's the next step in that evolution for you?
I think that's a fantastic question because I do actually talk to a lot of loan officers right now about that. I have a sign on my desk that says AI can't do the shit I do. And it's not even about just AI. It's about where I think technology is going. I tell my team all the time, I said, if you've got a W-2 borrower who's got an 800 credit score and 20% down, we don't have a shot at that loan. That loan very quickly is going to become more technology driven. It's going to become more AI driven. It's going to be an ease of access.
But the harder stuff.
Where we scale is in strategy. Where we scale is that borrower that is either in fear or stuck, doesn't know that they have options available to them. We can create a path that gets them to a yes and then get them into homeownership. Or it's an investor. I have owned 60 doors. So it's about how do I restructure the portfolio so that you can take that next launch into the next set of properties. So it's always about creating the puzzle versus creating the through line. There's a lot of lenders that just really only know how to do the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the basic loans. We've doubled down on the non-QM and the alternative solutions.
Got it. Well, congratulations on all of your success. When people say, where should I follow you? I mean, you're like everywhere. So is it like, follow me everywhere? Or is there one place where they really get the essence of Nicole Rueth?
We do a lot on Instagram and we do our long form on YouTube.
Okay. So IG, what's the handle?
The Rueth team.
The Rueth team. RUETH.
RUETH.
What about you, buddy?
Of course, all my work is at HousingWire. We have a top 10 business news podcast, HousingWire Daily. Sarah Wheeler and myself come on 3 times a day. I'm trying to get it 4 to 5 times a week.
I heard that lately.
Yeah,
I heard that rumor too.
Yeah,
she came in here hunting you down.
Yeah.
Man.
So, but Instagram, where we get close to a million people almost a month now coming there, and it's 24/7. I have no life. I'm just looking at charts all the time. So I try to educate people as much going on a daily basis, but the Instagram, just my name,
like
Logan.
20 stories going at any given time.
Yes.
Anytime I look.
Yes.
Yeah.
I produce about 700 to 800 stories a month.
I think what people really want to know is who does your shopping for you? Both of you. Look, I mean, I feel I'm grossly underdressed here. You know, I've got a Peter Millar shirt on.
Well, this is
what's going on over there.
The silk shirt is kind of my, MO at events.
And orange. You wear a lot of orange.
Yeah. So it's the Leroy Jenkins.
So do you do your own shop? Do you have a shopper?
No, I do my own.
How long, when you go shopping, how long is that like an all day thing?
You're
like, honey, I'll be back tomorrow.
Go
or
on
what?
the phone, Amazon, click.
Really?
Do not shop at Amazon.
Yes.
You look
Do
like
you really?
you look like you shop at Neiman's, buddy.
This is all Amazon.
Okay, I'm impressed.
What about you?
I don't shop.
You're
at
no
Amazon.
slouch.
Yes. No, I have Garbarini's. It's in the Cherry Creek Mall area. If you're in Denver.
Okay, you're a Denver person.
I am.
I'm simple. You know, I've been wearing the same shit for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
You know,
I
but I need to pivot though. That's why I'm becoming friends with people like you guys.
Yeah.
This has been amazing.
He could give you the Amazon link.
Yeah, just put on.
I don't know if I can pull that. Can you pull this off? Can you pull the shoes off? I think you can. When are you going to transition into sneakers? That's what I want to know.
Probably not sneakers. I have Gucci sandals. That's what I usually
Well, what do you
wear.
think when you see? I mean, because like on these stages, sneakers is the thing.
Sneaker.
I
This is
have
technically
sneakers.
like a sneaker.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Bright, white,
Yeah.
clean. you
No,
know?
no, I'm not a white shoes guy.
Well, I doubt you're a size 8.5, so I can't let you borrow these. This has been awesome.
Yes.
Been a great
agreed.
surprise. By the way, I didn't have anybody lined up. This is what I was going to do the whole time. Normally I line guests up weeks in advance. I figured, I'll just grab two prominent people, and I lucked out. Two of the most prominent people in our industry from the HousingWire gathering in Colorado Springs, the Broadmoor, Logan Mohtashami, Nicole Rueth. Let's go. Let's huddle up.
There we go.
Boom.
Love it.
We love the housing industry, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll be back
Yes, we
next
do.
week. See ya.